Hello, Jack Stetson here on a quest to make my camera not as choppy. It usually is the light that makes it choppy, so I'm moving and now I have like this ghostly glow because I'm in front of my wall hanging. But anyway, Jack Stetson here, and today was therapy appointment number 4, which was interesting. Some of it should be taken with a huge chunk of salt, but it was in fact still interesting, and so I'll talk about that in this here video. So, I show up and I explain that I'm still high from yesterday, by which I mean high on life and not 420 high, as I do not do that stuff. I wind up talking about some things from my Men's Mysteries paganism and friends of mine and magic and all sorts of stuff. I go into the history of a couple of friends of mine, which was interesting and depressing at the same time. Then she says that she asked me to define magic, which I later learned was because she's an energy worker and wanted to try some of that with me, and she wanted to assess if I would be open to that, as a lot of people who go there probably aren't. Talked about specific people. You know how some things might not actually be secrets, but therapists still talk to you about them as if you're trying to hide them? It went something like that. So, for example, I sense that you deeply care about this person, or I sense that you have feelings about this person. Yeah, that's kind of what I just said to you. Or I sense that this thing that you said to somebody else may be rooted in jealousy. Again, like, I just told you that. And I understand the mode of speech, kind of. It reminds me of certain modes of speech that I have learned where you basically repeat back what the person says in different wording, so that they can hear what they just said, and it helps them deal with it. So I have a feeling that that's what she's doing in that sort of therapist manner, but at the same time, it feels like she's trying to make me admit to things that I'm not being secretive about. So that's how a big chunk of it went. And then the part that was interesting. See, I'm identified as a warlock, and I'm also a magic user, but I'm also kind of a skeptic when it comes to individual flightiness, to use a word that maybe I shouldn't in the interests of being friendly to people, but I don't really flaunt my own gifts or talk about that often because, first of all, sometimes they're more curses than gifts, and other times it's just none of anybody's business. But I don't really doubt people when they talk about their own stuff that they're into, but I do take what they say with a grain of salt, automatically. Because there are a lot of people out there who either think they are something that they're not, or are trying to make money off of doing this sort of thing that they actually aren't inclined to do. So, she says that she's an energy worker and would like to do some energy work on me. And I say that I'm comfortable with that. So she gets me calmed down a little through some meditation stuff. And I get the distinct impression of, well, to explain a little bit, I have 2 spirit guides that I talk to on a regular basis. One of them is named Eric, and the other is I recently named him Jack Ideal. And I get this sense, as I'm meditating, of Eric sort of laughing at me and then leaving. And then she says, right after that, she's going to start talking to my spirit guides. Lordy. Like, the last person I want anyone talking to is Eric. I mean, no offense to Eric, but anyway, so here's the part that's both interesting and which makes me almost immediately skeptical. She starts saying that the things that my guides were telling her, allegedly. And it largely was in the mode of things like personal appearance, and how I need to start paying more attention to that, and how I need to start dressing better, which right now I kind of flip between dressing nice and dressing like a 15-year-old boy. And it's something that I do talk to my guides to often, because it's something that I very much want to change, but it's one of them things where I'm just embarrassed to start. because like you know people, and I know you as as being a certain way, and then you just sort of change that, and it's weird for me, and I'm doing better, but it's just it weirds me out. So first, it's like, I do talk to my guides about this sort of thing, and rather explicitly so. But then I remembered that's exactly what we talked about at my last therapy session. So she already knew about this stuff because I told her. And I mean, she did elaborate on it in ways that we didn't talk about in the session, but those things aren't exactly outside of the realm of coincidence either. So she starts talking about how within 10 years, my guides have told her that within 10 years, I'm going to wind up in the public spotlight somehow, and I'm going to do something very big, something political. And later she said that surprised her, but the thing is, it's not surprising, because I'm politically active and very open about how politically active I am. And I can't imagine not having said something to her about this, because it's a very large portion of my life, and I do a lot of public speaking. And again, like last week, I actually was dressed up because I was going to do public speaking. So again, this is stuff that you should know. There were things that were interesting without being very clearly things that I've already told her. Like my ears have been plugged up, and in her little clearing exercise, she said something about my eustachian tubes, where it's not like she went through every single one of my body parts and talked about clearing them, but for some reason my eustachian tubes came up, and they were in fact plugged, so that was a little interesting. But at the same time, I did mention that I had a cold, and when you have a cold, what happens? Your ear tubes plug up. So, those were the things that were a little, there were some parts that were about things that I know that I didn't explicitly tell her. I'm not comfortable talking about some of those. But there were moments in which I was slightly weirded out. One had to do with, what was it? Trading my desire for power for love and openness to love, which sounds incredibly vague, but it is very close to the wording that I've used in guide work, and very specific things that I've done in the past several weeks. So really, I'm kind of on the fence as to whether or not whether she's just telling me things that she knows that I want to hear, or already knows about me, or if she's actually channeling anything. I'm not outwardly doubting her, because I think that she's a very good therapist, and I do enjoy the little hippie things that she does. But I mean, I can't be just outwardly shocked. Oh my gosh, she's telling me all this stuff about myself, because it's all stuff that I've told her. And she did describe the character of my guides fairly well, with Eric being more forward, but also kind of almost vulnerable in a way, or rather he acts vulnerable because he's a bastard and he's like that. And Jack Ideal being kind of quiet and strong, but also sort of brooding. But still, I don't know. I did feel better afterwards. But there's too much that I knew she knew, and that sort of pushes my skeptic buttons. But anyway, that's all that really happened today. My next appointment is in 2 weeks. I will try to keep you posted until next time if anything particularly interesting happens. I will see you then, though. Happy trails.